Welcome to another episode of the Powerless to Powerful Recovery podcast. My name's Jason. I'm an alcoholic and addict. As always, our mission is to share experience, strength, and hope across multiple media platforms. The story of addiction and the road to recovery. We're not affiliated with Alcoholics Anonymous or any other 12-step based organizations or groups in any way. But here we are, Ron. I mean, we got another episode, and I got two New Yorkers in the room. Shit might get weird tonight.
Well, for sure. Well, actually, three New York. I mean, you're a New Yorker by proxy.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, that's true. We got three New Yorkers. There's no telling what's going to happen today. My co-host, Ronnie, no matter what's here, and obviously, our special guest, we got Theresa D in the house.
The one and only.
With the super lashes on. I mean, my wife would love those lashes.
Right?
They're the drama lashes.
Oh, man, you got them lashes. You know, anytime anyone ever comes on the show, I think it's always important to understand, like, you know, how we got here. And so it's the first time that I'm meeting you. And I mean, I heard you have 16 years of recovery. That's all I need to know. And you also said that you're a big book thumper. And that means you're speaking my language.
Yes.
But Ron, how did you meet Theresa?
Well, Theresa's another one of those women in the program when I got out of prison 2 years ago and got introduced to this whole CMA thing going on, that whole circle of people. Matter of fact, the first time we met was at Faith Over Fear. And I remember I had my Yankees jersey on. And
I know
got that
you did.
white tattoo. And she made some kind of comment, "You from New York?" And right away, as soon as she started talking, I thought, "Oh, man, Puerto Rican girl from New York right here."
And she also told you she's a Mets fan, right?
Yeah. No.
No, I am not. I'm from the Bronx.
I know. I was only kidding.
But most of my family is Mets fans, believe it or not.
Yeah.
Isn't that wild?
Again, like I've talked about before with the women I've met in CMA, my friends, excuse me, she's another one of those powerhouses that at all the events, service on the different committees, organizing, telling people what to do.
That's what
New York.
Yeah, I mean, that comes with it.
Right?
That comes with it.
So I see the little army she runs around with. Well, it's not a little army. It's a pretty big army of strong, powerful women in this program doing the deal. So I have a lot of respect for Theresa.
Well, Theresa, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
You know, and every journey starts somewhere, though. So let's get into your story today. We're going to talk about, you know, what it was like and how we got to be here today, 16 years. I mean, you know, the odds of recovery aren't very good, and anything over 4 years, I mean, in my opinion, any day that an addict can stay sober is a freaking miracle. But 16 years, I mean, I don't even know if there's a word to describe that. I mean, I think that's something that both of us are striving to achieve, is just long-term, lasting sobriety like that. So you were born in New York and you grew up in the Bronx. So why don't you take a moment just to kind of share like what it was like growing up, family dynamic. I know we talked a little bit before the episode, you know, mom bounced, abandonment issues that come in, abuse, trauma, and everything that's there. So why don't you take a moment just to share about that?
All right. So I grew up, born and raised in the Bronx, New York, and I had, you know, both my parents were there until I was about 8 years old. And my mom was, you know, she was really young when she had me. And so when I was born, I was really a beautiful little baby. And my dad, you know, when I was in the years that I was born, I'm not going to give my age away. I mean, you're not going to do it. You're not doing it. But in those days, if a guy got a girl pregnant, they got married, right? So my dad didn't really love my mom, you know what I mean? But then when I came, he fell in love with his daughter, and he fell in love with me, and my mom was jealous of that. And so she just really took out a lot of pent up frustration with my dad out on me, and you know, she's full Puerto Rican, so she's got the fire.
I'll tell you one thing about Puerto Ricans, dude. One time I flew into New York and I had my cousin lived in Manhattan, right? He actually lived in Scarsdale, so they got money, and then they had a little condo in Manhattan. So when my aunt would go shopping, she didn't want to take that 40-minute drive to Scarsdale, so she would stay in this little condo. So I went to meet him in the city, and it was the Puerto Rican Day Parade. I was like, holy shit, what the hell is going on down here? That's
hot.
I was younger. And it was like, hold up. You know what I mean?
Hey, right?
Hold up. But when your mom leaves at such a young age, I mean, what did that do to you, you know?
You know, The abuse part was, in my eyes as a child was, I was getting attention, so it didn't matter. It was love at that time. And then when I was 8 years old is when she left. So my concept of love and is your parents. Your parents are God when you're little. And so the abuse was okay because at least she was there. So, but when she left, the pain of her leaving was more excruciating than the abuse part. So my relationships and my future relationships were built on, hey, treat me any way you want to, just don't leave, because the abandonment was worse. Yeah, the abandonment was worse.
We've talked about that, Ron, and we teach group on it actually all the time, because if you suffer abandonment as a child, there's like 15 characteristics that you will exhibit as an adult. Right. And some you would think, wouldn't be associated with abandonment, but they are. Right. Like having trouble finishing projects or making commitments or trusting the wrong people, which we've all done. There's so many of them from that one thing, but we're talking about, trauma, and that really just is a theme in all of our lives at some point. Right. And so you started using that at a pretty damn young age. And I mean, when we talked before the show, I mean, you said 9 or 10 years old, you're smoking weed. Shit, my daughter's 11. And I always related to that. Yes. And I think like, holy, when we have guests on the show and they start young like that, I'm always thinking like, damn, I'm like trying to picture my daughter smoking a joint. Imagine? It's crazy. Right. But what was that like? How does that happen?
I think growing up in New York, everything is moving so fast. You grow up fast there. That's number one. Number two, I happen to be in a neighborhood where, I mean, I really was the black sheep of the neighborhood. You know what I mean? I started just acting out and hang. I remember I was on the school bus coming from junior high school, or elementary school actually, and this little girl said to me, "Hey, you want?" And I thought she was offering me a cigarette.
Yeah,
I was like, "Yeah, I'll smoke a cigarette. Why not?"
Yeah.
And she was like, "No, it's I don't know what did she call it? A weed? I don't know what she called it back then. It was like I said, it's a long time ago. I'm not giving my age away now."
You know what my dad calls weed? He calls it ganja.
The ganja. Yeah, okay.
And we had a turtle that just showed up in our backyard. Shout out, Pops. And we had it. They're in Brazil right now.
I know.
They're in Brazil.
I want to go.
And my brother broke up with his girl in the midst of the second day of their trip. So when I pick them up from the airport, they're gonna find out that my brother moved back in.
Wow.
Yeah. Wow. So that's gonna be fun. But we had a turtle that just showed up, and we had it for like 10 years. This turtle, and my dad named it Ganja.
Ganja, sure. That tells you about
just
your
a
dad.
fun fact. Just a fun fact.
Well, anyway, so this little girl offers me a joint, and I was really scared and freaked out. I was like, but I'll do it. And I did it. And that was the beginning of the end. Like I was about 9 or 10 years old when I did that. And then, I started to hang out with the people that were doing that. And so that became pills, and, pills back in the day were a little bit different than they are now. And just a lot of different stuff. They were good stuff. Yeah. They're really good stuff.
Ron, how old were you when you first started smoking weed?
I smoked weed for the first time. I was 13, 14. Yeah, right around 13 or 14.
It was like 8th grade. It was like 8th grade.
I had a big bag of that upstate New York ditch weed.
Oh, that Bammer?
Dirt weed, yeah.
The stuff harsh. And
you got to put it in an album cover to get the seeds out.
Yeah. We smoked this whole
we all
big
grew
bag.
up on.
Right.
I mean, I'm 40, so I mean, I get it.
All right, so I'm not too old. I'm not telling you.
For all the listeners out there, why don't you shoot a message and we'll see if you can guess her age. She looks great, and we're not going to give it away. But just like everything, right? In our, we're all big book thumpers, straight up, respect. And, when we look at it, our disease is progressive. It gets worse, never better. And left untreated, it causes death, right? And your story is just a great description of it, especially as we get later on of what happens, because it gets worse, like I said, never better. And so from the pills and the weed leads to 11, 12 years old, and now we're hanging out in the bar.
Yeah.
I mean, you grew up in, what kind of neighborhood you grew up in?
I grew up in an Irish-Italian neighborhood.
Shout out to all the paisans out there. You know what it is.
Peeps, right? Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And the neighborhood in New York City back in the day, the neighborhood raised everybody else's kids. We were all latchkey kids. We went to the neighbors fed us. The other neighbors we did homework at, and then we came home when our parents got off of work at 7:00 at night. So I was raised by the neighborhood. So by the time I was, tall and a little bit developed, and I was old enough, and they looked cute enough, they were like, "Sure, you can come in the bar, the neighborhood bar." They all knew I was underage, but they let me in.
And how old was this?
12, 13 years old. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. And so I was.
Can you imagine? Could you imagine
No,
Bella
I
going to the
know, I
bar?
do.
No. I know. I see little girls that when my niece was those ages,
You think about it, right?
I can't comprehend.
You're like, holy.
I can't. It's heart wrenching. It's really heartbreaking actually to think about that.
I'm not trying to co-sign any of what happened back then, but it was a different time back then
It was
too.
a different time.
Sure.
It was a different time. It was
Everybody
the
viewed
80s. I'll
the-
give you that much. That's all I'm giving you.
Right? They viewed the world different. You know, people
Absolutely.
saw things differently.
Yes.
And I don't think the world was ready for the horrific consequences that came
No.
from that, because
No
some
way.
horrific consequences
Oh, yeah.
came from that period of time.
Yes.
Yeah, there's no doubt
That's
about
where
that.
yeah, for
Do you
sure.
remember the name of the bar?
The Off Broadway?
Off
And it
Broadway.
was right
Shout
across.
out.
It was right across the street from the police station.
You know,
And I
that's
bet
right.
they had warm beer out of the
The
tap.
Off Broadway. Yeah. God,
Warm
it was
beer
such
out of the
it was a
tap.
good time. It was a good time.
And
Those
so
were good days.
Yeah, I mean, and so that's the thing, right?
fun,
and so
yeah.
it was fun. And so our disease, right, centers in our mind, right? Then we get the
Yes.
physical reaction called craving.
Correct.
And every time this thinking problem tells me that it's okay, my mind tells me that I can go back to when it was fun for me. Shout out
Yeah.
1997.
Okay.
That was fun. I
Okay.
had a fucking good time, bro. All right.
You were the man.
The man,
Yes.
right? I tried to, and I've been trying to relive 1997 until I
Absolutely.
got sober 5 years ago, right? So it's like, you know, but I've collected evidence and data that shows me that I can't ever get back to that time period because it's elusive, and I'm always trying to get there.
What do you tell your mom? You were doing research?
Yeah, well, now I tell my mom I was building a resume this whole time.
Building a
Still
resume.
not funny.
Yeah.
She
Yeah.
still
Data.
doesn't think it's
Data.
funny.
Yeah.
But
No,
there
not
was
Mom.
like, but
God, Mom's heart wrenched. We're breaking Mom's heart constantly.
I got a
Mom,
sweet
yeah.
little Italian mom. She
No.
wrote out every
My mom
bit of
too.
everything. Shout out
Yes,
all the
Mom.
moms
All
out
the
there.
moms out there for putting up with us.
But when we spoke before the show, there's like one defining moment that you remember, and can you share that, where, you know, you're at the bar, you're in the bathroom, that like defining moment that changed everything for you?
Yeah, there was a couple of girls in a stall by themselves, and I was in the bathroom putting some lip gloss on, and I remember hearing them whisper and giggling in there. I'm like, what are they doing in there? So I just waited for them to come out, and when they came out, they looked at me, you know, checking me out. They opened up a dollar bill, put some white powder. After they dried the sink, they put it down, made 3 little lines. One girl leaned over, sniffed one line. The second girl said the second line. Then they looked to me and they offered me the third line, you know, back in the 80s when people shared drugs. And I just leaned over and I did it. I didn't ask what it was. I didn't care what it was. All I would know is I wanted to have what they had. I wanted to do what they were doing because they were cool girls. And so I did it, and that was cocaine. And my life changed from that day on. That day forward, I wanted more of that, and that was it.
More.
We like the
more.
effects produced.
Yeah, sure
right?
do.
The book talks
Absolutely.
about we like the effects produced.
Absolutely. I
And
love
don't,
the effects produced.
and don't get it
Before
twisted.
part
I
of-
like the effects produced by all drugs right here,
Sure,
right now.
right
That,
here, right
that
now.
still has not changed, but I
Absolutely.
I
And
like
like
the
the
effect.
consequences.
Yes, exactly.
Right.
I like the effects produced by God far greater
Yes.
than any effect produced by any drug. It
Oh,
doesn't
that's
have
so good.
consequences. It has legs on it,
Yeah,
right?
it has legs on it.
We just
Beautiful.
like the book says, we become spiritually intoxicated in the family afterward, where it talks about that. So my goal is to understand how I experience spirituality, right? Prayer, meditation, physical fitness, being present in the relationships in my life, sports. So now I know how to experience God. So now I introduce those things into my lifestyle. So every time I do them, I do a big old hit of God, right?
Yes.
And
Right.
that's what we're all driving for. And so from that defining moment, what happens?
So the next night, I go back to the bar, and all the reasons why I went to the bar the past few months prior to it meant nothing. The cute boys, the girls who I aspired to be like, the dance floor, the loud music, the dartboard, you know what I mean? Playing pool,
Dartboard.
the dartboard, shout out, right? And I beelined it right for the bathroom. And this is my first experience of being stuck in a bathroom, right? I stayed there for
Okay.
about 4 hours waiting for those girls to come back. And I realized
I'm not going to miss them.
not going to miss it. And I remember looking out onto the dance floor through this window in the bathroom door there. And I remember thinking, why would you be out there dancing and playing pool and all that stuff when you could be in here where that white powder is? And so I very quickly realized that people were in that place were not getting loaded the way I wanted to get high. I wanted more of that. I wanted a lot of it. And so I migrated down to the South Bronx and stayed there.
And so when you talk about migrating down to the South Bronx, right? I've been to the Bronx, but I don't know it like that.
It's another
It's like
world.
South
So I'm
Phoenix. It's like South
assuming,
Phoenix.
yeah. So I'm assuming you went to the hood, right?
Went to the hood.
Went to the
Absolutely.
slope.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Oh,
That's right.
Gotcha.
That's
That's
it.
all
That's
you
it.
need to say,
That's
brother.
it. That's it. That's it.
And so
Yes.
we talk about being in a downward spiral at that point, right? So can you just describe like what that time period was and, what a downward spiral meant to you?
Yeah, so I end up going to 182nd Street and Crescent Avenue, and I get off the bus, and I go into this neighborhood, and the first thing I see is this girl standing by a mailbox, and she's in the Matrix, right? She's strung out on heroin. She's got black track marks on her arm, and she's just like dancing and floating. And I'm thinking, I want that.
What a free spirit she is.
Yes, I want to be just
How
like you when I
wonderful
grow
that
up.
is.
Yes, teach me all you know. Teach me your powers.
And she did.
And she did, and she took me under her wing. And the thing is I was too young to be out there. You know what I mean? So I ended up in a shooting gallery one night, and this guy said from the other side, just picture it. This guy, this dingy, dirty shooting gallery junkies all over the place, having sex, sleeping, going to the bathroom, and everybody's doing drugs, right? Having a good time. And this guy, this dope fiend on the other side of the room was like, little girl, what are you doing here? You're pathetic. Get out of here. You have no money. You have no hustle. Get lost. And I remember thinking, how dare you talk to me like that? You know what I mean? I'm going home because I was homeless by choice at this point. I was out there just getting loaded and not going home, even though I had a home to go to. So I remember thinking on the way, but I said, when he talked to me that way, I thought, I was appalled. So I got on the bus and I'm all the way home. I go to myself in my brain, in my addiction brain. I said, I'm going to do the right thing. I'm going to stay sober this time. I'm going to listen to my parents. I'm going to keep my room clean. I'm going to go to school. I'm going to be a good girl. I make all these decisions that I am done. And I mean it with every fiber of my being, like the big book talks about. Right?
And you really meant it.
I did mean it.
Yeah, hell
In
yeah,
that
you
moment,
did.
I meant
yeah,
it.
no doubt.
And then I get home and I wake up 3 days later and I have a built-in forgetter. I have the ultimate bullshitter. I have the biggest, the big con artist in my head.
Built-in forgetter,
Built-in
dude.
forgetter that tells me it's going to be different this time. Just don't go to that neighborhood. Stay away from that guy.
That was the
go
problem.
2 blocks over. Don't do it 3 days in a row. Don't sniff it. Just don't shoot it. This needle's the problem. You know what I mean? So you start to negotiate with yourself, the great negotiator, and it's a big fat liar. And I end up, just spiraling into the abyss very quickly. Homelessness, prostitution, getting arrested, psychiatric wards, detoxes over and over again, trying to get help, therapeutic communities, which are like long-term places that try to like beat addiction out of you, basically make you wear signs and shave your head and cleaning grout with, toothbrushes until you can not be an addict anymore. And they can build you up into like a Christian or something. And,
like the Marines, they're like the Marines. They break you down, build you up over there.
Yes,
I've been to
You guys actually went to the same one.
Same
Shout out Phoenix Home.
Phoenix House.
Phoenix House.
And
Samaritan Village.
weird
too.
name. Okay, the name.
Isn't
Okay.
that weird? It's Phoenix House. Isn't that strange? Interesting.
Yeah.
So I got a question though. So I'm just curious, right? So being you're beautiful, you're pretty, okay?
Thank
At your
you.
age still, okay?
Looking
All right.
out.
And so I just assume that when you were young, you didn't look your age and you were pretty, and now
Yes.
you're a prostitute on the streets of New York, in the
Yes.
city, in the Bronx.
Yes.
I mean, how scary was that?
It wasn't.
It wasn't.
It wasn't because I didn't understand what was happening. I was too young to know what was happening. And I had an old biker dude that said, listen, we need to make some money and I have a good idea. I'm like, what's the idea? I'm like, I just want to get high now. I don't care. I just want, what's the solution? Solution is just stand over there, wait till a guy drives by and get into a car and just tell him you want $20 and do your thing. And so the first time I did, I was scared. But then when I got $20, I was like, oh, that was easy, $20.
Yeah, too easy.
We're going to get high.
Yeah.
We're going to get high very quickly. And so that just became my hustle. And I ended up, the sex industry was my hustle on every level.
Yeah.
When I'm getting high, that's what I do.
Yeah,
that's what I do, unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean, I get that.
So what I heard when you said that, and it hit me hard, when you asked were you scared, and you said, no, I just didn't know. We can't tell the truth from the false.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
This is the only normal.
Oh,
Our
This
alcohol
feels normal
begins
to
to
me.
be only normal. That just begins to be normal every day.
Just it. It's just what I do. I jump in and out of cars.
Right.
I do this. They give me $20. I go get high, and I do it again.
It's my job.
Yeah.
This is what I do. Yeah.
And we just repeat it over and over, and we get caught in that
Vicious
cycle of a spree,
of
right?
abyss. It's an abyss.
Yeah, obsession, desire, relapse, remorse, repeat, repeat,
Yes.
repeat, and
Repeat.
we're just like a hamster in a
Absolutely.
wheel every day, every single day.
How old are you during this?
I'm like 13, 14 years old at this time.
It's crazy,
It's
right?
just it's heart wrenching.
I mean, New York's a hard place,
Tough place.
dude.
Yeah,
I mean,
it
that's
is.
why
Tough place.
that's why I asked the question, because
Yeah, it is.
I just trying to picture it in my mind as I do every time anyone speaks or I hear a story. Like I try to envision it and feel it, right? And so it's like, damn. you know, and you know, the consequences always come. And how many times were you arrested during that period of time?
I can't even remember.
Too many to count.
I can't remember. Yeah, they would just swoop up the girls in the street every few weeks and say, "Okay, it's your turn. It's your turn to run through the system, Teresa." And I would just go through.
Have you ever seen how they used to do that back in the day in New York? They would come with
they do sweeps.
They come with these big paddy wagons, big box trucks, and they would just come and just scoop the girls up, and they were pretty.
And we'd get out within a couple of days. We'd go right through Sister a couple of days and just get the charge on our record. But
eat a couple sandwiches, drink
like
some milk.
They were doing us a favor.
Nap in a shower. Shower and a nap.
Yes.
Couple sandwiches.
Go to the restroom.
But as we continue, I mean, so we're talking about a time period, a real hard time period. You're on the streets, you're homeless, you're in out of psych wards, you're hustling all day long, you're strung out. I mean, that's a hard life, right? You know, just like it talks about, you know, in the big book where, you know, we're like, my point is it has a lot of shipwreck analogies, right?
Right.
And especially in a vision for you, there's like about 4 or 5 different ones, but you know, because in our addiction, we're like members of a shipwreck where we're just stranded out in the ocean, right? We don't have the fellowship to help us survive, right? And so every day is a struggle to keep our head above water.
Yes.
We're fucking tired, dude.
You're tired.
You know what I mean?
Tired and cold.
Cold. Hell yeah,
dirty.
right?
Yes.
And so the consequences, though, continue to become greater, right? And so at 17 and a half years old, turning 18, you catch a couple charges, right? Just a couple.
You think?
So why don't you talk about how this kind of ends for a period of time?
Oh my God. So at like 17 and a half years old, I end up, so I stole a gun from a coke dealer so me and my boyfriend at the time go out and we start doing stick ups. We start doing after hours, which are bars that open up after 4 o'clock in the morning. They're all illegal stuff going on. There's drugs selling in there. They're gambling in there, doing all sorts of stuff. They're like
because the bars only close for like 2 hours in New York, right?
Yeah. When they're closed, the after hours are open. Right. So we would go in there. We'd rip. You know, it was violent. So we'd go into these after hours, and then we started to do gypsy cabs, which are cabs that are illegal cabs, and
so they can't report it because they're illegal.
Yes, that's what I thought. And
allegedly.
Right. So then I get picked up and I end up when it was all said and done, I had 64 counts of robbery in the first degree.
That
between
ain't good.
Bronx and Manhattan. Yeah. So I did. I had.
So
18. I did.
So 18. So they charge you as an adult then?
Yes. Well, I got arrested 8/8/88.
8/8/88. Okay, so you got to.
There's my age.
You gave it away.
I know,
you said you weren't
going to figure it out now.
Yeah, said you were. You said you weren't going to do it.
I know it's too late.
But
it's all right.
And so
I'm alive.
You're young. You're in. Now you're looking at prison time, right?
Right.
And so what happens during that time period when you get arrested with all those charges?
Well, I'm in New Jersey originally, and then I end up getting the Jersey charges were possession of the gun and all this other stuff. And they said, listen, if you waive your extradition from New Jersey Jersey charges, we'll just drop everything because you got so much against you in New York. You just go. So I ended up going back to New York. I was on Rikers Island for about a year and a half, 2 years.
Ooh, that's a hard place.
Rikers Island is no joke. And the thing is when I went on to Rikers Island, it was just the beginning of the influx of crack hitting New York City. So when I first got on there was like old dope fiends. Everybody was cool. Everybody knew their place and their, and then all of a sudden in 1989, this influx of crackheads just
poured in.
Oh my God, there was thousands.
Ron.
And it was
shout out to all the crackheads out there.
I mean, if you were a drug addict in
New York at that time,
late 80s, early 90s, you smoked crack.
And the crackheads came and hit Rikers Island like banshees. And these chicks were off the chain. It was violent and scary, and the cops were bringing drugs, and it was just it's crazy. Yeah. Rikers Island is crazy. And then I ended up going up to prison. And then I remember when I first got into the prison, I went up to Bedford Hills, which is intake and also maximum. I got almost 6. I did almost 6 years, like 5 and 3/4.
So they give you like 10 or 11, and then you do 50% out there. No, or something?
I got
because they do different type of sentencing out there. They're like 5 to 10 you get.
Yes, exactly. So when I came out, I had 10 years left on paper.
Okay, all right, I get it. Yeah.
But I have to include the time I was in Jersey, so that has to be included. That's why it was longer than the sentence that I got.
Okay.
But anyway, so I get up to Bedford Hills, which is intake and also maximum security prison. Yeah, and And I remember the lady was giving me my steak greens and my boots and stuff like that. And she said, here's your number. And I said, well, what do I do with that? She's like, you put it on everything, use it for everything. You don't forget it. You remember this number. I was like, I'm not going to remember this. How am I going to remember this number? And she said, you will never forget this number.
221882.
89G0846.
202497.
Oh, there we go.
She was right.
Yeah, she was right.
It's crazy. So so I ended up, staying in Bedford for a while. Then I went all the way upstate to Albion by Canada. Came back down to Seconic. Got released on work release. Of course, got loaded. Came back.
Took that away.
Sent me all the way back up to Canada, and then got released finally. And then February 29th, I got released, actually. It was February 29th I got released. And when I got released, the thing that happened was, again, all those years I was in prison, I'm like, listen, I'm doing the right thing this time for sure.
Yeah, I'm not coming back. Yeah,
here.
hey, hell no, I ain't doing this again.
Exactly. Because, but when I came out, I was like, I thought I had like that chip on my shoulder, like I did a nickel, I'm a badass. You know what I mean?
Oh,
All this stuff.
ego.
And it's not even true.
Yeah.
Because the truth is I cried many nights in my cell wishing I was home. Wishing I'm missing Christmas, missing birthdays, missing people dying, missing weddings, missing life. And I'm just stuck in this hole.
I missed 7 years of my daughter's life and my wife. 7 years.
God, I'm so sorry.
When I got out, I mean, she was basically 2 when I got in, and when I got out, she was 9.
Wow.
And
it's really sad.
Shout out to my wife because she kept our relationship. The reason our relationship is so good. First off, girls love their dads no matter what. I'm a girl dad. I do ponytails and shit. I got a 1-year-old girl too.
Oh.
You know what I mean? I'm a girl dad. I coach girls soccer.
That.
Shout out bad baby Gigi.
Yes.
But if it was, I truly believe if it wasn't for my wife bringing her down there, having get present. Amazon came every time. I think she thought that I was Amazon for a very long time. And it's when you do time like that, when you have to try to figure out what grade she'll be in when you get out, that's a long stretch. That's a long time. I cried many nights in my cell too. Many nights just thinking about, well, in the first prison sentence I had the same plan. I did a couple push-ups, what I mean? Felt good, wasn't going to repeat the same behaviors, and caught an 8-year prison sentence. So you have this great plan of doing the right thing and getting a job and getting to a nice relationship, the white picket fence, and everything's going to be so good.
Sure.
And then you get released, and what happens from there?
Well, I go see my parole officer, of course.
Got checked in with the PO.
Right. And then within the first 6 hours between seeing the parole officer, traveling up on the bus and the train, I'm sucking my shoelaces on the same corner I got arrested on a couple of years prior, before I went to prison, and I'm loaded again. And I'm high
just
again.
Like that.
And there's a part in the big book that says, I'm high, and I'm thinking to myself, why I'm loaded? How did this happen again? I'm like banging on the bar going, how did this happen again? Why am I here again? Am I crazy? Am I crazy? Yes, I am insane.
Yeah, how many times did that happen to you, Ron?
And as quick as that thought comes in, am I crazy? It goes out. Because I got to hit another one.
You got to get high. Just keep going. I just got to get high. Because the monster is in charge.
Yeah, you talked about that forgetter. You know what I mean? This, I got to get high. Don't think, don't feel. You know what Jay says all the time.
I feel
Don't
nothing.
think, don't feel, don't care.
When I use that brief moment of nothing, I sacrifice every time just to get that brief moment because the noise, the distortion is so loud.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. The pain.
Built-in forgetter.
Built-in.
At times you can't bring your consciousness, the force of
sufficient force and memory of suffering and humiliation.
We forget the dope sickness. We forget the prison sentences. We forget the black eyes.
We
forget how good it feels to be a parent, a dad again. I forget how good it feels when I'm sober. I forget all that. I forget the showers at Alhambra.
Yes.
Right? I forget the whole time. I forget all that shit, and I think that I can go back one night to 1997 when it was fun. And I think I can just do it one time because I'll stop before I get dope sick this time.
Not do it 3 days in a row.
But the facts is that I've collected evidence for 20 years that shows me that I never stop before I get dope sick. I never stop before I have to see my PO. Never do it.
Right.
But this time's going to be different.
It's going to be different.
And that's why it centers in my mind.
Right.
And so 6 hours later, you're loaded again, right? And then it gets progressive. So you're 6 years farther into your addiction, right? And so what happens from there?
Well, we don't, at this point, I don't know anything about the thing that makes me a drug addict or an alcoholic, as the big book calls me, right? And that is the phenomenon of craving. You talked about the craving earlier. It's a physical allergy that happens only to the real alcoholic or the real drug addict, right? It happens. It says in the big book, it never happens in the average temperate drinker.
Never.
Mm-hmm.
So if it's happened to you, and there's a chance you're considering you might be one of us, and it's happened to you, where you put it in your body, you don't know how much you can use, when you're going to stop, you lost control, you're probably one of us. So welcome.
Yeah.
There's a solution though. That's cool. That's
there
cool.
is pretty. There is.
But yeah, so like the phenomenon of craving took over. I thought, doing a little bit of dope, I just sniffed it, for God's sake. So I don't have a problem with sniffing. I have a problem with, putting a needle in my arm. So I stayed away from that for a couple of months. And of course, the monster just become militant for my disease. It just tells me what to do.
Yeah.
I get up and I just am a soldier. I just do what it tells me to do until it finally tells me, just put the needle in your arm and stop wasting time.
Right.
Yep.
You're wasting time and money and good get high time. Go do it. And then I spiral again.
It's crazy, right? Like when I sponsor guys and they're like, I just have a really hard time being powerless. I'm like, dude, you've been bowing down to heroin for the last 20 years, player.
Right.
Yes.
You have the ability to admit it because you did it every single day, bro.
Oh, yeah.
Calm down.
Yes.
Let's think about this, really. You know what I mean?
It's so true. The stuff we come in here telling ourselves that make us different is insanity. It's the true insanity,
If you've been through what I've been through, you would use to.
Right?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Right? That was the big narrative I would tell myself.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
What's the sense? I don't matter. It doesn't matter. You don't matter. I don't matter.
Right.
I'm miserable, and if I'm going to be miserable, I'm going to be miserable the way I want to be miserable.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Needle in my arm.
Right.
And
Right.
but it always ends up happening. When guys come back to prison, you're like, "What happened?" You're like, "I went back to what I know." Well, you better learn something fucking different, player. I mean, because that ain't working. But that's what happens to you, right? You go back to what you know: the prostitution, the running the streets. You're hustling. You're doing the same things again. But this time, when someone pulls the car over, you meet a guy, right? And what happens?
I meet a guy, and he decides he's going to help me.
I am going to save you.
Yeah, he was that Captain Save-Ho. Sorry, I shouldn't have said that because he turned out to be an amazing man.
Shout out to him.
Shout out to him, exactly. He happened to be HIV positive too. He's actually he was diagnosed with HIV positive.
Did he tell you that right away?
No, but there's a whole story, but I don't know if we have enough time for it. But
another time, another show.
Another show.
Yeah,
Okay.
he eventually told me that in a time of panic, listen, man, this is serious. What you got going on here, this disease you got going on here, because I was like, thinking I could just have a little bit more before we go get into detox. And he's like, you're dealing with life and death here. He's like, I'm HIV positive as a result of this, and I thought, oh, great. Now I got this. And now I'm all on the other side. Where are we right now? And he's taking me to detox on the other side of Jersey. I'm like, oh, my God, I got to get back to the Bronx. I got this guy. Oh, so anyway, that's how I found out. He put me into detox. I went into rehab after that. He came to see me. He supported me through the whole thing. And I ended up falling in love with him. And
10 years later.
10 years later, I ended up being clean. My sober date was March 9th, 1993. Shout out to Biggie Smalls.
Biggie Smalls.
Losing Biggie on that day.
That's your guy.
That's my guy, dude.
It's my guy too. Wait
when I was a kid from the upper middle class neighborhood, rolling
Biggie.
around bumping Biggie with a gun because I'm hood.
Yeah.
So hood.
Yeah.
I just want to say something real quick because
Yes. Oh, yes. Yeah.
where we come from, and a lot of people don't talk about this, especially if you're not from that area, but HIV and crack and that whole epidemic was going on at once.
Yes, it was.
And it was affecting everybody.
Oh, man. I have sat next to judges, cops,
Everybody.
doctors, lawyers. I got high with all of them on crack.
Right.
And HIV was annihilating New York City.
HIV and crack went hand in hand, and it was the strangest thing because obviously when you do crack, you're engaging in unsafe sexual behaviors.
We didn't know what was happening.
No.
All of our friends were just dropping all over the place from the flu. We were like, "What's going on here?" And
then it was just the gay people got it. You know what I mean?
Well, and the junkies, junkies. We saw it in our community for sure.
For sure.
Yeah.
And so now we got 10 years, right? And you become like a soccer mom driving a minivan.
I raised
and just
two sons.
Raised two
Beautiful.
kids.
Beautiful.
Life is good. Everything's going great for you.
I'm
This
clean.
is
I'm doing
clean.
the right thing. Yep. Yeah.
You did, the NA step working guide, and you got busy in that.
I helped write it, actually.
Yeah.
Step working guide for NA. I was part of that, yes.
That's awesome.
Yes, very cool.
Okay.
Very
Shout
cool.
out to NA.
NA, absolutely.
I don't say that very often, but I will say it today.
And I know. The thing is, like I said, the recovery in the fellowships on the coast, West Coast, East Coast, is very different than the middle of the country. So like NA is a very amazing program.
Yeah, no doubt.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, no doubt.
And it's saving a lot of lives. But here it's really convoluted the way things are. So it's just a little bit different here in Arizona as far as.
Thank God for resentments, or there'd be no NA.
Resentments period.
Ooh.
Exactly.
You said it, didn't you?
Exactly.
I did.
There's a lot of meetings that started over resentments. You know what I mean? A lot of people got involved in service over
All you need
resentments.
is a resentment in a coffee pot.
That's right.
That's it. We're in. And so 10 years, and so you got 16 years of recovery, and 93. If you do the math, that's not 16 years. So at some point of the end of this 10 years, you relapse, right? So what led to that?
So when I have a really bad back, and so every once in a while my back would go out really bad, and I'd go to the emergency room as a result of it, and I would tell the doctors, listen, I'm a recovered drug addict, don't give me any narcotics. And
Give them the disclaimer.
Yeah, the disclaimer, right. And what was happening was that I was becoming so miserable in my life, and I was just not happy in my relationship. I was just not happy. So I started to act out. I was like, I cheated on my man I was with. I started stealing stupid little things, like just doing really
the defects start coming back.
Coming back up to the surface.
It's manifesting itself.
Yes,
Yeah.
and so either you're moving up the steps or down the steps, and so I was moving towards the first step again, and I ended up.
That.
Yeah, I ended up picking up again. I went to the emergency room one time, and I consciously said, I'm not going to tell the doctor I'm a drug addict. Yeah. And when you look at my back on an x-ray or something, they're like, well, give her morphine.
Yeah.
And so they gave me morphine, and I loved
More,
it.
please.
Yes.
More.
I'd
more.
I'd like the pink 60s, please.
Please, thank you very much.
Morphine makes the top of my head hot.
Woo, delighted. Morphine, give me the yummies.
All drugs make you hot, bro. Trust me, dude. I've been there many times with the baton and the taser in the morning meeting in the office.
What?
Please don't baton this guy in our morning meeting.
The middle of winter, I'm in the office
Okay,
in my
I'm sorry.
boxers
My
sweating.
mind went really in another place.
I mean, that was after hours in our office. But and so you relapse, and here we are again.
Yes,
we pick up right where we left off, and
Right,
so
not
now
worse.
here, poof, just like that is another 6-year period
Yes.
of running the streets
Yes.
and the same behaviors, the same things, the same pain, misery,
Yes.
everything that comes along with that. And at some point, you make it out to AZ. So why don't you share what led up to that, phone call to your friend that got you out here to AZ?
So my friend Patty, shout out to Patty.
Big shout out to Patty.
Big time. Patty and I met in NA. She had a couple years longer clean than I did. And we promised each other in a moment of love for each other and tribal stuff. Hey, if either one of us ever relapse, the other one will go back into the depths of hell and get the other one out. And this is in a time when I'm clean and I'm never planning on relapsing again. I'm not
you're
gonna
like,
hide
I'll
that.
get you.
Yeah, I got you. Yeah. Well, she did. She did
bro.
that.
Yeah.
I'm in the street. I have a street cell phone. Again, the ones we don't know where we got. All of a sudden, we have a cell phone for a couple of weeks, and then it's gone. And I was in a truck with some dude. I don't even know who he was. And I get a phone call, and Patty has a really soft voice, and she's like, Theresa, it's Patty. And I'm like, I was like, God called
Click.
me. I'm like, what?
What
Why are you calling me? And I had been shooting coke for about
Yes,
a week,
God?
so I was like, I can't talk right now. I gotta go. So I hung up the phone, and she really blew my head. So I went to sleep finally, and after a week of, like I said, shooting cocaine, and when I woke up a couple of days later, I was like, man, she said to me in the phone call, she said, listen, I have a plane ticket. It's at your mom's house. Come to Phoenix. Let's try and get sober. Let's try and get clean again. I was like, I gotta go. I'll think about this. Yeah,
That was back in the day when you could mail tickets.
Yes. So I come out of sleeping after, coming out of my stupor, and I come up sleeping. I'm like, and I realize what the condition that I'm in. I'm like, why not? Let's go to Phoenix. I'll go. That was my name. I was like, I'll go. I'll do it whenever I'm down.
I'm down. I'll do it.
So I called my mom, and my mom said, come up here. And I was on heroin and meth. And I was doing heroin and methadone. I was in a methadone clinic. So I had to detox off of methadone and the heroin that I was doing on top of it. and I'm flying out here to Arizona, and all I can think of is I grew up in the concrete jungle, so I'm like, there's palm trees out there. This is going to be paradise. This is a permanent vacation. And then I saw palm trees on Van Buren. But anyway.
Oh, you're speaking my language. Yeah. Shout out to Van Buren.
Excited you got right now.
20th Street in Van Buren.
White boy running around
flamingo,
BC.
baby.
Yeah, shout out Jimmy Jacks.
Jimmy Jack.
Yeah, I know.
35th Avenue in Van
We're
Buren.
trouble.
Yeah, that's-
We're gonna
We're
out there
get in
doing the
trouble.
most
We're
right
all
now.
old school,
Poor
man.
babies.
That's old
Poor
school.
babies.
But you get here and you end up in Mesa.
I ended up in Mesa, yeah. So she brought me to her house, and I went to a couple of meetings, and I saw the difference in the way recovery was running. And
I don't like it.
for me. I don't like it. It's
Yeah,
not
you
going to
look
work
for all the differences
It's not
instead
gonna
of
work for me.
similarities.
Yes, exactly. Plus, I already know all this stuff, so
Yeah,
I'm just
I
gonna.
wrote
I'm gonna
the
find
NA
a guy.
book.
They don't say, why are we here? They're not saying, why are we here?
Well, they're just not doing
What are
what
they doing?
I already know how to do this part, And anyway, so I looked for a guy, and
Met a guy.
I met a guy, and of course, he was the one. And so
New higher power.
New higher power, and he was loaded. He was getting loaded very quickly after I met him, and I'm like, yeah. But he was from New York, so we had a lot in common. So I said, well, where are you? What are you doing? I would call him on the phone. He'd be like, well, you don't want to have nothing to do with me. I'm in a mess right now. Don't come near me. I'm thinking, yes, I do.
Yeah.
So where are you? And
Yeah,
I
where are
found
you?
him, and we just started running amok in Mesa, and I became a honing device for the police. I got arrested
That
over
happens.
and over and over and over again.
And we're talking in a 1.5 year period,
Yes.
16 arrests.
Yes.
And then, you get here and they're putting you in pink boxers and pink socks and
Yes.
they got the tents in the summer and you're
Ooh, that
thinking,
was no
what
joke.
the hell? Where would you rather be, Rikers Island or the
Rikers
tents?
Island, without question. Well, if Joe Arpaio was the sheriff, I would rather be on Rikers Island. I don't know what this sheriff is like now, but Joe Arpaio was no joke.
No.
No joke.
Yeah, I've
I'd
got
rather
2
be on
years in the county.
Yeah,
I've done,
county is
and
hardcore.
that's
It's
2 different
horrible.
times. Other than a couple little ones, a couple days, 2 solid years each time fighting each case on each prison sentence. I spent a year thinking that I was going to get a better plea. Never did.
Just hold out. Just hold out. They told me.
Just more
Bullshit.
peanut butter.
Yeah. Oh
Just
my
more
god.
peanut
I haven't ate peanut butter since I got out.
No, I hate
or
peanut
pancakes.
Butter. I hate peanut butter.
I don't eat them. I don't do
do
it.
it.
I
I
didn't
can't
get
do either
pancakes.
or.
How did you get
This prison.
pancakes?
I was in prison.
Oh, okay.
And so now we're getting arrested all the time. And in Arizona, at some point, it's prison, right? So here you are. You're standing in front of a judge. The judge is getting ready to sentence you to prison time. They're sick of seeing you over and over again. And what happens at that moment?
Well, I had this conversation with my probation officer, and I'm like, listen, just give me a shot at one of these halfway houses. I know how to do time. I don't know how to do this thing. Let me try this recovery thing again, right? She didn't know about the first time I tried. And she let me go to a halfway house called Sunlight of the Spirit.
Sunlight of the Spirit. Shout out to them.
Shout out to Sunlight, big time, saving a lot of lives. And so I went to Sunlight, and I was introduced to the big book at Sunlight, and I was introduced to the 12 steps, and I was introduced to a concept called God, which freaked me out because I thought God was like this dude on a throne somewhere up in the sky, with cherubs floating around him and stuff like that, long hair, and I was thinking that is going to keep a needle out of my arm. You got to be kidding me,
Right.
But it flows through us, right?
It's all over.
Yeah, and it
It's
says
everything.
deep down in every man, woman, and child. In every man, woman, and child is the fundamental idea of God, but it gets obscured by pomp, by worship of other things, but
Yes.
some form or another is there.
Yes.
Deep down within us, it's a power that flows through us, right? It's that 50-50 relationship. My 50 is the action steps. God's 50 is the outcomes in my life.
Yes.
Through awareness, I experience God, and then I know that this power is real and it's working in my
laying it
life.
down.
And so now that's your sobriety date. May 21st, 2007. Shout out to you.
Thank you. Thank
Yes.
you.
And
Thank
so now here
What a
we go
miracle.
where we straight up. And now here we are where we embark on this journey of recovery. And so take a moment to talk about, what it was like, sponsorship, service work, your sponsor, your experience working through the steps. Why don't you take, a moment to kind of
Okay.
talk about what it was like?
Okay. So I was really uncomfortable, like I said, with God. And then I met a sponsor. Believe it or not, it was a guy. His name is Mike Talley. He's no longer with us. And he OD'd from this disease, but he was an extremely intricate, powerful man in recovery who saved thousands and thousands of lives. He was articulate. He knew this big book. He knew how to So the big book
And
is
that's
the,
abnormal,
is the program,
right? A guy sponsor. Usually that doesn't
That
happen.
doesn't normally happen, and I don't recommend it. But I was so desperate for what he was.
He was good. He knew what to do.
I walked
he
into
had,
a meeting, and it would happen to be an all men's lineage meeting, and I needed a meeting, and they didn't kick me out. So I was watching, I was listening to what they were doing in there, and I'm thinking, wow, man, this is unbelievable how they're talking about this book, and they were bringing the book to life for me. And so as we know, the program is the big book, and the 12 steps
Correct.
that are outlined in the book, that's the program.
The program.
And so when we talk about being in the program, my program, I'm working the program, we're talking about that. And I wanted that. I wanted to have my own experience with the program. And he said, listen, please take me through the steps. Not, you don't have to sponsor me, just please take me through the steps. Because he was so
I get that.
profound,
Yeah.
right? And he said, let me talk to my wife, which I respected. I said, absolutely. And he talked to his wife, and she said, okay. And he took me through the steps. And it was literally a movement in this fellowship, because I was the first female sponsee he ever had. And he had like a huge lineage underneath him that had a big problem with me, by the way. A lot of the guys didn't like that I was pushing my way in. And then when he took me through the steps, he taught me how to understand the first step on a cellular level, which means I understood with every fiber of my being that I was fucked, and it was not when I was going to get high. It's not if I was going to get high, it was when I was going to get high. It was inevitable. That powerlessness means that I have no choice over whether or not I'm going to get high again. I will get high again. If I look at my life, it's a series of trying to stop, not being able to stay stopped. I always get high.
Right.
I always get high. And with that understanding came the desperation of a drowning man.
Yeah. Yes.
Then we got into the second step, and he was like, hey, well, I was like, listen, the God thing, I'm having a hard time with that.
Can't do it.
Right. Then he read the story from me on page 56, 57 about the guy in the hospital.
We agnostics, the very end.
Yes. That story brought the book, brought the second step, brought God from being in a little box. Because I said, okay, if I have to believe in God, I'm going to be a pagan. That's it. I'm not doing any organized prayers. I'm not getting on my knees. I'm equal to the gods and the goddesses. Listen, I took a beautiful religion, right? A beautiful Norse mythology, and I twisted it up into my twisted idea. You know what I mean? I'm going to make it like this. So I put God in a box, and after reading that story on page 56 and 57, I became, the box opened up, and I was ensconced with understanding that God was everything. I understood it. I could breathe in that every aspect of everything and all is God. Everything, the garbage in front of me, the bag of dope from 10 years ago, the relapses, the overdoses, the people dying, babies dying of AIDS. I got it. I saw it. I understood that God was everything, and that my stupid little finite mind is not going to figure out the infinite. And so either he is or he isn't. What's my choice to be? And it became is. And so it gave me the ability to go through the rest of the steps and really, you know, by the time I was taught from this man that if you have a problem with any step you're on, because a lot of people have a problem with the 4-step, 5th step, telling their deep, dark secrets, the step you have a problem with is the first step. Because if you understand, again, that you're going to die from this for real, that you believe it.
I like that little nugget right there. I like that one.
You're going to scream on a roof your deep, dark secrets. You're not going to care.
Yeah, hell no. And that was my experience. I was in a prison yard.
I'll do whatever it takes.
And I'm telling you right now, you know, when heroin addict, dude, it's by any means necessary.
Absolutely.
You know, so... But I was at the point where, dude, I didn't care. I just wanted whatever I needed to do. I was willing to do it. Sure. It didn't matter. I didn't care what anybody else thought. I carried the book with me all over that prison yard, set a boundary. I did not care. And I just love how you said that. And you connect it all in. And so the 4th and the 5th step, what was that like for you?
Well, you know, again, I here's the thing. Here's a little story I tell people whenever I speak. I have people engage with me. I'm like, okay, how many of you guys have trust issues? And half the room will raise their hand. I got trust issues, right? I want to do my 4th or 5th step. What I have found in the years that I have sponsored and the steps that I have done myself is that we are lazy. And step 4 is when we put pen to paper and we actually have to start doing something, right? And so it's a job to do a 4th step. You got to think, you got to take time, you got to put effort into it. You know what I mean? So we're lazy. That's what it all comes down to. It has nothing to do with trust. Listen, I used to shoot piss water. I don't have trust issues. I don't have trust. I would take a bag of dope, whatever you gave me. You told me it was dope. I put it in my mouth. I put it in my arm. I didn't care. I didn't have trust issues. You know what I mean? So to say I have trust issues is not true. I don't believe it's going to work. It's going to work. I'm afraid.
It's so true you said about being lazy, because I have 5 sponsees right now that are all in the 4th step, and they've all started at different times, and they're all
still in the same spot.
Yeah.
They're all in the same spot. But let me ask you a question. is when you got to the fifth step, you know, we talked about being lazy and not being able to, you know, put pen to paper, and that's really the root of it. So what was your experience when you got to the fifth step?
I was ready. I was excited. I wasn't scared to say anything. I wanted to give 100%. I wanted to go to any lengths. Because we talk about, like, if we put just a small amount of time and effort into recovery that we put into getting loaded, it's going to work, right? The amount of work I did to get loaded was insurmountable. And what I have to do to stay sober is not even close to that. So with the fifth, by the time I got to the fifth step, I was like, yeah, what do you want to know? I got here's all of it. Here's all of it on every level. Swallowing big chunks of truth about myself and being willing to share it with myself, God, and another person without fear.
Yeah, and that was my same experience too, you know, and anytime anyone ever, you know, relapses, I always take them back to that part in the book, you know, having persevered the rest of the steps, they wonder why they fell. They never completed their house cleaning. They took inventory, but hung on to some of the worst items in stock, because it's that one thing that I don't want to share that I leave off. And that one thing has the most guilt, shame, embarrassment, remorse, and regret attached to that event, that circumstance. And when I think about it, because it's there and I know it's there, I start to feel real poorly about myself. And then the solution becomes drugs and alcohol. Don't think, don't feel, don't care. That's why it's so very important. And so when you get to the fifth step, and now here we are where we talk about the sixth, and it's one paragraph and a prayer comes next, and it's so many people just breeze right through it like it's nothing. But there's so much in that one paragraph about those character defects.
I got to say this. That's my favorite part of sponsoring guys when I get to 6 and 7. That's my favorite part.
Let's form your identity.
That's it. That's for me. I just totally. I've had so many experiences, and I've got to see people have experiences when you do it the way it's mapped out, you know? It's amazing.
I mean, let's look at them defects. Let's turn them into assets. Let's be a better you.
That's right.
That's how you grow, right? And continue to become the best version of yourself. Finest specimen of manhood as one could ever wish to meet. I think that's God, but I'm far greater than I've ever been. And that is the launching point for me. It's like 4 and 5 is done. We're going to put that in the past. I'm willing to work on these defects, turn them into assets, and then let's get the prayer in there, because let's have some humility. Because because I did 4 and 5 doesn't mean nothing. I got a lot of work to do now. I'm going to humble myself, and now I'm going to go make these amends to the people that I owe them to. What was your experience with the amends?
I just want to touch on 6 and 7 really quick. The beautiful thing for me, the way I see the steps, is like 1, 2, and 3. God is like, okay, just got to get some awarenesses here, get some acceptance here, right? Then 4 and 5, we do some heavy work. It's uncomfortable. It's confusing. It's scary. It's overwhelming. And then God comes back in 6 and 7. It's like, I got this. Just give it to me. I got you. Just keep doing the work, right? Then we get to 8, and we just organize what we put together in the 4 step. We're just organizing the 4-step information into the 8-step directions. And then for the amends part for me,
she said directions. God, dude, they're not suggestions.
No,
they're goddamn
directions.
Directions.
They're clear cut.
Absolutely.
Not suggesting anything. Yeah, it's not suggesting anything. It's directions.
That's right.
If I want what they have, I got to do what they did.
Well, I can do that. It's a program of suggestions.
Yeah, it's a suggestion, bro.
Yeah, well, okay.
Yeah.
Do it your way. I suggest you do it. Take the directions. But anyway, so I can tell you a story about a 9-step amends, right? I had stolen a bunch of stuff from a Kmart out in Mesa, and I had a bunch of jewelry. And I remember I was so scared to go out there, because it was so much that I knew they must have had me on record. I knew they probably had my picture up in the security office, whatever. So I drive over there in my car, and I tell my sponsor, I'm like, listen, I'm going to leave the keys to my car in the wheel well of the car. I'm going to go in here. If I don't call you within an hour, please come get my car. And please bail me out of jail. Please. You know what I mean? So I go in there, and I'm like, listen, hey, I'm a recovered drug addict. I said, listen, I would like to talk to the manager, and I just want to tell you my situation. I'm a recovered drug addict. I don't believe that I'm going to stay sober if I don't right the wrongs of my past, and I wronged this place. I ripped you guys off. I stole a lot of money from you. You didn't deserve that. I was wrong for doing it. I'm sorry. I want to know what I can do to make it right, and who I have to talk to amend that. And she was taken aback, of course, and she said, well, I don't know. Let's call Ron. we'll name his name was Ron, right?
Yeah.
Ron was a security guy that had been there for like 15 years. Okay. So she's like, if anyone knows what to do, it's Ron. I'm thinking security, cops. Don't call
asset
Ron.
protection.
Call
This
Ron.
is bad.
You know what I mean? Right. So they call Ron on the walkie-talkie, no answer. They call Ron on the cell phone, no answer. They call Ron, through the overhead thing, no answer. Like we don't even know where Ron. Where is Ron?
Yeah, where is
the security
he?
guy? Why is
he's chasing someone in the parking lot?
I'm thinking, why is he not coming? And then God said to me in my head, "Listen, Chick, this one is a pass." And she said to me, "Listen," and I sat waiting for this guy, Ron. I'm telling you, I was sweating. I was so nervous. I was so scared. But the book says we must be willing. We must not drink at anything.
That's right.
And so I sat there and I said, I'm going to take my licks, whatever it looks like. And Ron never came, and she came out and she said, "Listen, I don't know what to tell you to do except, just keep doing what you're doing and do the right thing. And I'm proud of you." And I'm just like tears are welling up my eyes. I'm like, "You're proud. Thank you.
That's God.
Thank you. Yeah. And it would have been God if I had to go to prison too, because I have a purpose being sober. I get that, and I understood that at the time. But I'm glad it didn't turn out that way. So that's one of them. Of course, beautiful amends with my family and being able to give the people that I annihilated their lives the opportunity to have a venue to tell me how I hurt them and have an opportunity to heal, for me to just shut up, be small, and allow people that I have hurt to heal. It's not about me feeling better. It's about other people.
And you
feeling
ask him,
better.
"Is there any other ways that I've harmed you that I'm unaware of?"
Absolutely.
And you get to hear, those
God,
ways.
I hate that
They get
part.
to have to finally
my
tell
mom
you.
said, there are some ways. Hearing your daughter cry for you at night, that was hurtful to
God.
me, and you got to listen to that, and you got to own it, and you got to correct it and amend it. That's what it is to fix. And then, of course, the maintenance steps and everything in your life, and so now here we are, a 16-year period of experiencing the promises materializing over and over in your life, and you got married. Shout out Greg.
Shout out to Greg.
Hi, Greg.
Take one quick moment with a 20, 30 seconds. Tell me about Greg.
Greg is awesome. Greg is an industrious hard worker. He is he's the one man that has had my back through everything and all things. He lets me be the free spirit that I am. He loves me. He's loved me through everything. I've never had a man in my life that has had my back like he does. I've never felt so strong in a relationship than I have with him. He, he's the type of guy that just blindly has faith in us and in me. I mean, he works his ass off 6 days a week from 4 a.m. till sometimes 7 o'clock at night, working in the heat in the summertime. He puts gas in the ground, and he just hands over his paycheck to me, and I take care of all the bills. He doesn't ask no questions. He asked me if he can buy some chew or something like that. It's just unbelievable.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable. He just has total faith that I'm doing the right thing, and I am, of course. But I mean, just to have somebody to have trust in me like that, it's a really good thing. He's a guy, so he could be one of those, one of those schmucks every once in a while. But in general, he's amazing.
We get to have beautiful relationships.
Yes.
We deserve to have beautiful relationships
that
in our
people
life.
trust you, and they have faith in you, and they build you up and don't bring you down. So he's a beautiful.
Big shout out to Greg.
We love you,
Greg.
And so over this next 16-year period, a bunch of amazing things have happened in your life. But the reason why those amazing things happened in your life, because over the last 16 years, you've continued to sponsor women, sponsor and service commitments. So I'm talking 16 years later, like Ron said in the beginning, still at all the events, sponsoring women. If it's going down, you're there, because we have to stay in the herd. That is the whole point. Right. We need each other. It's a team sport, and your life is just, a reflection of what happens when you keep those non-negotiables in your life, the non-negotiables of recovery. And you started a business, right? ReikiHands.org. Everybody, it's energy healing. If you want to go to the website, REIKI hands.org. Check it out. It's energy healing. I want to get her into our facilities. I want to have her have the ability for her dream to come to fruition like it has. We have these goals, these aspirations, these dreams, and recovery gives us the ability to achieve them, because goals you don't achieve are just good ideas.
That's it.
And I had plenty of good ideas, but today all three of us get to achieve goals. Absolutely. And so why don't you just quickly tell us, what you do? with that.
Well, I just want to backtrack for 1 second. Can I do that? Do I have time to do that? Okay, real quick. Step 10. I just want to talk about step 10 really quick. I know I'm all over the place, but step 10, I just want to clarify that step 10 we do throughout the day.
Oh my
People
God.
get really confused about
You don't go home at night and write, I'm going to go home tonight and do a step 10. It says, when these crop up at once.
We go to God.
I know. I hear that all the time.
We go to a friend or sponsor.
You
We
speak
talk
my
about
language.
it.
It gets watered down.
She speaks my language, dude.
Yeah, and you know what? The 10th step is the least worked step, because if we work the 10th step as often as we should consistently throughout the day, then the need to go back and do 4 steps every few years would be we wouldn't have to do it. We would not have to keep doing it over and over again, because we would nip it in the bud in step 10.
She hit all my major points that I
did.
get upset
She
about.
did,
You hit every single one of them.
So he's going to go home tonight and he's going to replay this whole episode to Ashley before she even watches it.
Yeah, all the major points were there tonight.
Had to say it, though.
But
thank you.
please, everybody, inquire about Reiki hands.
Yeah,
It's energy healing. It's we talked a little bit about it before we started recording the show, and like I said, it's something that I think, because we want to, at any facility we're at, or even in our own recovery, we want the full continuum.
Correct.
We want the full mind, body, and soul.
See
right?
where other people are right.
Exactly. Physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. And the way you do that is by introducing those things that give you the ability to experience those areas. It's my job every day to engage those 4 areas of my life, and that's how I continue to grow. So ReikiHands.org. This has been just an amazing episode to have you on here
so much.
to be vulnerable, to talk about the things that you have, to share your experience of what it's like. We've had a lot of people on the show, but 16 years is super powerful to me. And you're a miracle. And thank you for being on the show today and sharing everything. Ron, where can they find us at?
Find us on Facebook, TikTok, Ronnie No Matter What, Powerless to Powerful on YouTube, Instagram. We're all over the place right now.
Spotify, iTunes. Yeah, you can find us anywhere. Ronnie No Matter What, look it up. Powerless to Powerful. The hat, player. You got the hat, brother. I
got the shirt coming, everything.
I see it, brother. We're going big time, aren't we?
You know what I'm saying?
So for everybody out there, all of our listeners, continue to subscribe. We're super grateful. Continue to send the messages. If you want to be on the show, DM us. We'll get you on. Just continue to support the cause, man. And if you know someone out there desperately in need, struggling with addiction, reach out to us, and we will help you. That is the whole point of this, is to help people. So continue to watch the show, and we love you. Thank you.
Namaste.